also identified, looking at cyber threat, also we identified all the cyber threat actors, or some of the cyber threat actors based on their categories. And then we have also looked at the techniques that these cyber threat actors normally use to carry out their cyber crimes or cyber attacks. We have looked at all of this, and like we told us from the beginning of this course, that after analyzing all of this, before you can start talking about cyber security. And so even before we get into start talking about that cyber security, we still need to know several things, right? We still need to know things like demystifying things like vulnerabilities, and look at all the types of weaknesses that can be found in the cyberspace. Hopefully that will be what we'll be covering in our next class. But today, what we want to see is the goals. So considering all these threat actors and all whatnot, so what has cybersecurity come to achieve, right? What are the objectives? What is it that cybersecurity is trying to achieve to mitigate or put a control in place to checkmate all these different types of threat actors? If you remember in our last class, we talked about phishing, social engineering, and phishing, right? And that was told us is a technique that these threat actors always use. Previous classes, we have looked at malware, ransomware, viruses. We have looked at distributed denial of service. So all of these are tactics and techniques that they use in carrying out the activities, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Dr. Wale, I think your mic is unmuted. Okay, thank you. So, like I was saying, what has cybersecurity come to achieve, right? It's what we'll be looking at today, and then move towards other things, right? Then hopefully in our next meeting, we'll be looking at vulnerabilities, the different types of vulnerabilities and weaknesses that can be found on systems, right? So that is why we're considering cybersecurity goals today. And for cybersecurity, just like we have explained that there are the countermeasures you put in place to safeguard your cyber assets, right? So what are their goals? No, their goals try to, narrow down all of the things that cybersecurity is trying to achieve into these 6 aspects that we have listed here. So it tries to see, ultra security has come to achieve what we refer to as confidentiality, integrity, availability, and also to achieve authenticity and non-repudiation. Non-repudiation can also be referred to as accountability, right? So cybersecurity has come to achieve accountability, that everything that is done over the cyberspace is accounted for, and also to help people build trust in the whole technology space, right? So for confidentiality, even though most times you see me dwell on a particular slide and I'm doing all of these things, always know that most of these explanations are actually in other parts of the slides, right? So I might just decide to dwell on one slide and then discuss all of these things, right? Because if I want to start maybe scrolling down, then I can start scrolling down, I come and discuss confidentiality, I move down, to discuss every other thing, integrity and the rest. But I can decide to also dwell just on this page and then discuss on this term. So don't think that maybe we're just using just a particular slide, right? So for confidentiality gives us the assurance that any resource or our cyber assets are accessible only to those authorized to have them, right? So confidentiality is an assurance, gives us the assurance that your assets are only used by you, by authorized persons. access to those cyber assets. I believe when I'm using all of these terminologies, we understand what they are, what assets are, or what our cyber assets are, because we have discussed them earlier, right? So the assurance, the confidence that you have that what you call your own, it is only you that have access to it, or only authorized people have access to that. So that is what confidentiality is about. So cybersecurity is also trying to achieve that, trying to give you that assurance that whatsoever is yours, right, over the cyberspace, you have access to it, right? So confidentiality is actually different from privacy. As a matter of fact, privacy is seen as an aspect of confidentiality, right? So privacy is an offshoot of confidentiality. And for privacy, we say privacy gives you the assurance that an individual can control or influence what information they have. So privacy gives you the assurance of control to your cyber assets, right? Privacy gives you assurance that you have control over your cyber assets, and it is you that determines what happens to those cyber assets, while confidentiality gives you access or allows only authorized persons to gain access to that cyber assets. I believe we understand where the thin line is drawn between privacy and confidentiality, right? So the next thing is what we also see as an offshoot of confidentiality is data confidentiality, right? Whereby this tries to assure you that sensitive or critical information is not made available or disclosed to unauthorized users. So whenever you hear the word confidentiality, what should ring or come to your mind at first is the fact that your assets, what you hold that is of value to you in the cyberspace, is not accessible to unauthorized people, unauthorized individual. So anytime somebody talk of confidentiality, always know that it's talking about access to resources for people that are authorized, right? That is what confidentiality is. Then the second thing we are considering is integrity. Integrity, right? So integrity also is a goal, one of the things that cybersecurity has come to achieve. So it's giving you assurance that your assets are prevented from unauthorized or improper modifications, right? Unauthorized changes. People don't just, modify your asset without the authority to do that, right? And this integrity is seen in This integrity can be seen in two forms: data integrity and system integrity. So, like I think we just threw a little light on what data is the other time in one of our classes. So when these data are not changed, when this information are not changed, or they are only changed by authorized persons, we say this information has integrity, right? So if Mr. President is saying something, right, and that information passes down to you, the word by word, how it was said by Mr. President, right, that information is still maintaining its integrity. But if somebody modifies it or tries to add maggi and salt or tries to, change whatever he wants to change just to beautify that information, then we say that it has been modified, it has been tampered with. So the integrity of that information is no more there, right? Then the other one is availability, which gives you the assurance. Please always know when you're looking at this, because we have what we call the CIA Triad, which we talked about earlier in one of our classes, even though we didn't delve into it in details, right? So if you see, most cybersecurity people will tell you, okay, of the CIA Triad, right? So that is confidentiality, integrity, and availability. But we that have gone further, we always add these other three that you're seeing there, right? And we'll explain them and you see why they are also considered as goals of cybersecurity. So whenever we're looking at these goals, just know that it is an assurance that cybersecurity is trying to give. So all of the goals or the objectives of cybersecurity is actually giving you an assurance, right? So for availability, availability is giving you the assurance that systems responsible for delivering or storing and processing information are accessible when required by authorized users. So availability just means that your cyber assets are available to authorized users whenever they are needed, right? Those things that are of value to you in the cyberspace are available as at when needed and only to authorized persons, right? So that is what availability is, right? So we also have authenticity. Authenticity that refers to the characteristics that a cyber asset maintain its original quality and is being genuine. It's still maintaining its originality and is still genuine, right? That is authenticity. It is still authentic. It's also one of the things that cybersecurity has come to achieve. Even though we'll digress, we'll look into them like one after the other again as we progress. Then we have no repudiation, which is a guarantee that the subject that uses resources or asset cannot later deny having granted access. So non-repudiation is is an objective of cybersecurity that make sure that everything that you do, right, you cannot deny it over the internet. So that is why we always tell people that don't think that when you put something in your phone and then you delete it, right, it cannot be found. It can always be found. Because one of the goals of cybersecurity is to achieve non-repudiation, non-denial. So you cannot deny the fact that anything happened or the fact that something happened while you are on the cyberspace, right? So it cannot be denied. It's one of the goals of cybersecurity. Cybersecurity has also come to establish trust. So trust is a measure of reliability and authenticity. How a system can be trusted to satisfy critical requirements without undesirable results. It is a function of behavior of parties in conversation. So trust, what cybersecurity or this goal about trust, cybersecurity is making you to trust the cyberspace, right? Trust the cyberspace. It's one of the achievement or one of the goals that cybersecurity has come to achieve, to make you trust the cyberspace, because trust, like we all know, is a behavior of humans, right? It's a human behavior, right? So cybersecurity is trying to also bring in that behavior into the cyberspace. And that is why some criminals will always want to leverage on trust to jeopardize or to carry out their crimes. And people can live with you for 2, 3 years just to make you build trust in them, right? Just to make you trust them before they go ahead and carry out these attacks. So we'll still digress and then look at them in details, right? So like we said, confidentiality ensures that only those with the right and privileges to access resources or assets are able to do so. That is for confidentiality. So a resource or an asset has confidentiality when it is protected from disclosure or exposure to unauthorized persons. So you can say that something is confidential when it has not been exposed to unauthorized persons, right? So when unauthorized individual or system can view information, confidentiality is breached, right? So the moment an unauthorized person can view a particular information that they are not supposed to view, we can say confidentiality has been breached. And these things can either be intentional or unintentional. So whether it is intentional or not intentional, whether it is a mistake or not a mistake, the moment there is that breach, we say confidentiality has been breached, right? So for example, when confidential information is mistakenly emailed to someone outside the organization rather than to someone inside the organization, you know that there is no way you can go back to the other email to go and delete it because it has already gone, right? So at the moment that happens, then you have to report to your cybersecurity team that there is a breach in your organization. So another form of confidentiality breach is when maybe an employee threw away a document containing critical information without shredding it. I don't know if it was this class I was talking to about having shredders, having shredders or shredding machines in your offices. You don't just throw away papers, right? You must shred those papers. You have to pieces them, shred them, right? So if an employee just throws that type of paper and it contains, definitely there is a confidentiality breach. So for confidentiality, what are the protective mechanisms that cybersecurity has told us to put in place to achieve confidentiality? One of such things is for you to classify your assets classification. Please let us be mindful when we say asset, resources, information, or whatever it is we are using here. Just know that we are talking of that thing that is of value to you in your cyberspace, right? So, and that is why I'm using the general term cyber assets to refer to them, right? And those of us that started the class together, you notice that we explain all of the things around assets. We mention information, data and information assets, categories of assets or domain of assets. We also mentioned infrastructure domain. We mentioned the people domain. We also mentioned our culture and ethics domain, right? So those are different domains of assets, right? So when you say asset, resources, just know that we are looking at those things that are of importance and of value to you as it concerns the cyberspace. So you must be able to classify them. That is one of the protective mechanisms you have to put in place to show that you are trying to ensure confidentiality, right? You must do what we call asset classification because the kind of value you have on your car is different from the type of value you have on your chairs in the house, right? So you have to classify them and then prioritize them to know which one is what and what damage can one cause or can any of them cause. So your phone, the kind of value you put on your phone might be different from the type of value you put on your generator. Some persons might want their generator or place their generator higher than their phones. Some might put the phones higher than their generator, for instance. So you have to classify your assets. Then the next thing is to come up with a security policy, standards or procedure, right, on how things or this asset has to be assessed, right? So if it is my car, I have to come up with a law in the house to show that, okay, my car keys are always on the place. Nobody should ever touch my car key, right? Nobody in the house should play with the car key. It's like you're setting a rule, you're bringing a policy, to help achieve confidentiality, right? If it is the generator, you can say, okay, nobody should access the generator room except I am around, right? So you're trying to achieve confidentiality. You are putting policy, you're putting a rule in place. And like, okay, maybe in classes to come, we'll look at policy standards and procedures, right? So policies are those set of rules that maybe that organization puts in place for themselves, right? So you can actually do that, when it comes to the house, or you are doing them in your house now, we refer to them as maybe, you can say a set of principles, right? You are adopting a principle or you are giving yourself guide or you are adopting a hygiene on what to be doing, right? So you set those rules for yourself. Then you also learn how to secure your information at rest. Now, when we explain what data is, we didn't talk about the positions or the states of data, right? So we have states of data, states like they are what's the word now? It's not position, right? But the level or the position in which that data is at that particular point in time, right? The state, just like you say, state of matter, right? So the state of data. There are several states that your data can actually be found, right? Your information can be found at rest. Information that is just stored or kept on your hard disk and kept somewhere. It means it is at rest, right? So those type of information, you have to learn how to secure them so that people don't just get hold of them and make use of those storage devices, right? There's also states of information on transit, right? On transit, when you are actually transferring information from one person to another. I'm sending an email from myself to Timmy now, right? That is a state of transmission. So that we look at that and say, okay, that at that state, information is in the transmission state, right? Then also there's a processing state of information or data, right? The processing state is that point in time where you're actually acting, you're actually carrying out an action on that data or information. So for instance, I'm typing something on Microsoft Word. At that point in time, I am processing information. I'm acting on something, right? So all of these states of information, remember, information at rest, on transit, and during processing. These three states have methodologies of how to maintain confidentiality while you are playing around with this information, right? So for information at rest, we encourage you to do what we call encryption, right? You encrypt the information so that people don't have access to it. They are seeing it, but they cannot read it, they cannot open it. So you have encrypted it, right? So you only have the key. So whenever there is an encryption or whenever something is encrypted, a key will be generated for you, right? And only you have access to that key or know that key, right? So one of the techniques to do that, to secure or achieve confidentiality on information that is at rest, is for you to do encryption, right? For you to do encryption. For information on transit, we encourage you to only transfer or transmit information only through secure links. Only through secure links. So most times, like our web platform or our website, when you are browsing and you don't see a padlock at the edge of that website, know that that website is not secure. And so if you send information through that type of link, you will be jeopardized. Somebody can, tap into that information, right? So for instance, if you are browsing and you are sending information, maybe you want to send an email or you want to pay for a credit card or for something that you purchase, if you look at the browser and there's no HTTPS, the S is not there. It means that browser does not have security. So when we say information on transit must be transferred or transmitted through websites that have those type of security, HTTPS, not just HTTP. So we can say the secure layer socket, the secure layer security or the transport layer security. So most time when you want to type, you see HTTPS, that S stands for security. And it means that website has the transport layer security or the socket layer security, right? This is it's something that we see often when we are browsing, right? Or you see a padlock by the left-hand side of your browser. If there's no padlock, they know that that website is malicious. Or on that website, any information that passes through that website can be trapped. Somebody can sieve into that information. Then for information that is under processing, you practice a good hygiene to make sure you alone have access to that information, right? You practice a good hygiene so that you don't divulge the information to unauthorized persons, right? Then another technique to use to achieve confidentiality is for you to educate people that keep this information or that keep these assets. Education is very key when it comes to cybersecurity, and consistent or constant training and retraining of people help them keep themselves abreast with the emerging trends in cybersecurity, right? So you must or should educate people that you know are custodian of your assets. You have to educate them oftenly, right? So for instance, if I'm dropping my car key with my first daughter or my first son, always, and the person knows, okay, this is daddy's car key, he has a place of keeping it, I should be able to tell that person that, oh, this is my car key. Anybody that picks it, if somebody mistakenly press anything, he can unlock the car and somebody can just walk into the compound, enter into the car and then drive it away. Just maybe a scenario like that. So I need to educate the person, always ensure that this car is always locked. Whenever I give you my car key, ensure that, okay, you lock the car, and you keep the key in a very secure place. You also go outside and try to check if any of the doors were unlocked properly. All of those things. I have to educate that child so that the person understands this, right? So also you can do one of these, or you can do a combination of all of these techniques, and we'll say that you have achieved confidentiality. So another important property is what we can refer to as utility. So value of usefulness, right? So if an asset does not have the value of usefulness, it means it has lost its importance to you, right? So the moment the asset also have the usefulness to you, right, it can help you achieve confidentiality because it is only you that knows the usefulness of that asset, right? Somebody should confirm that you can hear me, and if there are any questions, please go ahead and ask. Can you still hear me? Timmy, can you still hear me clearly?
Sir, I can hear you, but the network is breaking over here. Breaking. I don't know if it's my network.
Okay. I actually had heavy downpour here, but I think it has subsided. So I don't know if it's from my end too. But whichever way, the recordings will always be made available so that you can listen to it wherever you don't get it clear, right? Okay. So the next one is integrity. Integrity, we say something has integrity when it is whole, when it is complete and uncorrupted. Nobody has tampered with it. Nobody has modified it. The president writes a letter to Mr. Peter, for instance, right? So no news agent have seen that message. The message just moves from the hand of the president to Dr. Peter, and that is all. So that message can say, somebody can say, okay, it has integrity because nobody picked it to modify it or to tamper with it. It's coming direct from the actual person that generated the message. So say that is integrity. So the integrity of a resource and asset or information is strengthened when it is exposed to corruption. So integrity is strengthened or you see this thing lack integrity when it is exposed to corruption, damage, destruction, or other disruption of authentic states. So corruption can occur while information is being stored or transmitted. Of course, many computer viruses and worms are designed with the explicit purpose of corrupting a data, right? So those are the things that our viruses and worms, right, do these days, right? Because nobody sits down to design a virus that will just come and make your system to start getting slow. Because the moment the person does that and is not actually making use of any of your resources, it means the person is losing, right? So most of the viruses that are developed these days are targeting the integrity of the files and folders on our systems, right? So they try to change it either by increasing the size or by converting or locking the file so that you don't have access to it, or so many things, right? So when such things happen, we say integrity has been breached. So if you look at files and their integrity, that is one of the way you'll be able to know whether a file is actually corrupt or not, whether a file has worms or viruses, right? So another key method of assuring information integrity is file hashing, right? So you want to achieve information integrity as one of the objectives as far as security has come, you have to create a hash of your file and then compare them always. Now, what is hashing? Hashing is a technique used in cyber security that changes every sentence or every word to a unique number of alphabet, numbers, and special characters. So, for instance, if I am to hash with a particular algorithm, and the hashing algorithm converts all that I put inside to maybe a 16 character. When I say character, I mean both numbers and alphabet, right? So if I put the word Peter and I hash that word into the algorithm, what I will get is characters up to 16. Even if I put method, I'll get characters up to 16, but there are different characters, right? So hashing is just like you generate a particular code or number about a particular file and then keep that code or number. The moment that file is changed or tampered with, and you go and rehash that file, it will give you a different type of information, right? So and you compare the both of them. The moment they are not the same, you know that okay, there have been a breach on integrity, right? So how do you achieve integrity? A file is read by a special algorithm that uses the value of the bits in the file to compute a single large number called a hash value. So like I told us, it's actually an algorithm. You pass your word or document through the algorithm and it generates a particular amount of words for you to always use. So when you come back and regenerate that document, if it doesn't give you the same thing as what you have gotten about it from the beginning, you know that it has been tampered with. So that value or that code that is generated, we refer to it as the hash value, right? As the hash value. So the hash value for any combination of bits is unique, right? So anything you are putting inside, the hash value is always unique. So you can see hash value of 16 characters, depending on the algorithm, 24 characters, 32 characters, 64 characters, up to even 512 characters, right? So you can see hash value in that state, depending on the type of algorithm that is being selected to be used, right? So if a computer system performs the same hashing algorithm on a file and obtains a different number, then the recorded hash has been that the recorded hash value for that file, right? So what they are saying is if you pass that hashing or that file through a hashing algorithm and you come back and do it again, and you are discovering that, okay, the hash value are different, it means that file is corrupted, right? So when these files are corrupted, we say, okay, integrity has been compromised. The next one is availability, right? So availability provides timely and reliable access to resources. Timely and available access, that is what availability tries to achieve or is trying to achieve, right? So it enables authorized users to have access to, their required information and to receive it in the required format, right? That is availability. So you are searching for something online. If cybersecurity is not in place, it means most of the things you are searching online will not be available to us. So cybersecurity has come to help us achieve this, right? The third point there is a security breach in availability occurs when either access to those entitled to a system is denied. So if access to the system is denied or access to the information resources is denied, we say a security breach of availability has occurred. Information only has value if the right people can access it at the right time. Examples of attack that leads to availability breaches is what we refer to as denial of service attack. So we talked about that attack recently also, the denial of service attack. Talked about it when we were doing our last class. You see, when somebody tries to deny you of some services, we say a denial of service attack has occurred, right? We say a denial of service attack has occurred. And the primary aim of denial of service attack on the website is to deny users of the website access to resources of the website, right? So other factors could lead to lack of availability to important information, which may include accidents such as power outages or natural disasters. So these are some of the type of crimes or attacks that may be targeting availability, right? So how do you cover it? They say regular doing offsite backups can limit the damage caused by damage to hard drives, right? So always have backups. Always have backups. If you want to fight availability, you must always have backups. You must always set up your backup, right? Okay, so let's look at the technology. How do you achieve availability? So the designs for availability, we are targeting two layers that we always look at, even though we have not talked about the OSI layer, which is more technical. It's a more technical aspect of cybersecurity, right? So what we are saying is the availability is always, you always look at things to do at these two layers. The application layer, which is what is making the thing or presenting these items to you, making you have access to the item, right? Or to the assets. We say that is the application layer. So in our OSI model, we actually have 7 layers. So the application layer is the topmost layer, which allows you to install an application on your system for you to be able to gain access to whatever it is you want to gain access to. So that layer is the application layer. Then the network layer is the layer that allows for interaction between you or your device and any other device, right? So the design for availability include physical infrastructure for you to put in physical infrastructure, for you to put in load balancing, for you to put in some resilience, for you to do a business continuity plan, for you to do monitoring and tracking. Remember, we have also talked about backup, having backups, right? So having backups, putting physical infrastructure in place in case there is a power failure in one location, the other location should pick up immediately, right? Also doing load balancing so that in case something is the services is too heavy on a particular machine, and that machine cannot deliver the service fast quickly, you can actually move it or pick another machine to do that. So you do load balancing. You also put resilience. So resilience is like when you have security in two places, security times two, so that the moment one is failing, the other one is picking, or not even times two, you have different types of security in place to aid a particular security. So for instance, if I have generator, I have solar panels, or I have that solar, I also have rechargeables, I also have NEPA light connected. All of these things, what I'm trying to do is to build resilience, right? I'm trying to build resilience so that the moment there is no NEPA light, then my solar power, whatever, will pick up. And if that one is not available, then my generator should pick up immediately. And if the generator is not available, then my rechargeables should pick up immediately. So what I'm just doing there is resilience. I'm building several walls of securing or achieving light in the house, right? So another area is monitoring and tracking, whereby you keep monitoring these your resources to prevent denial of service to it, or to prevent attacks that are against availability. Then develop a business continuity plan. Always have that plan available, your business continuity plan, because at times what might happen might not even be an attack. It can be a natural disaster. And the moment you don't prepare your business continuity plan, means there's no other document for you to fall back to continue doing business. And that is why we expect and advise everybody to, know how to draft out a business continuity plan. A business continuity plan, right? So we also move down to authenticity. And like we told us, authenticity means originality, origin, integrity. That's to say, Mr. President is sending me a letter, and the letter is directly coming from Mr. President's hand. Not that that message has entered his chief of staff before he moves to his to whoever that got the message to me. Other people might have tampered or opened it, right? But for the fact that it's coming from the hand of the president to my hand, it's it tells about authenticity, right? Now, authenticity and integrity always have, these thin lines, just like privacy and confidentiality always have a thin line. That is how authenticity and integrity also have that thin line. Integrity, if you use that scenario and painting, it's just like the president write a letter to Peter Ode, right? And the president finished writing the letter, gave it to the chief of staff, who now gave it to one of their his PA to locate Peter Ode and give him. Now, they have not tampered or opened that document, but the document has moved from one hand to another before it gets to Peter Ode, right? For the fact that the document has not been modified, has not been changed, it means that document still maintains or have its integrity, right? But when that document is moving from Mr. President's hand to Peter Ode's hand directly, right? We say that document has authenticity. It's authentic. There's no two ways about it. So what we say is something that has a verified integrity, an original integrity, an integrity that is coming from the origin of whatever resources or whatever assets, right? We say, okay, authenticity has been achieved. So it is what it claims to be, right? When something says, okay, this is what it is, that is what it actually is. We call it authenticity. So it's a property of being genuine and being able to be verified and trusted. Confidence in the validity of transmission, a message or message originator. It also connotes verifying that users are who they say they are, right? And that each input arriving at the system comes from a trusted source, right? So authenticity helps us to know or to agree or accept people the way they are, right? It helps to prove that who you claim you are actually that person, right? It means you are authentic. You're authentic, right? So also we also look at accuracy, the property of something free from mistakes and errors. So that is also an offshoot of authenticity. When something is accurate and free from mistakes and error, right? So that is that. Then we look at non-repudiation, which we say, okay, you can also go for accountability. Now, what is accountability? You are held accountable for all the activities that you do over the cyberspace. So the fact that you are held accountable, it means you cannot deny any of the activities that you have actually carried out in the cyberspace. So that is what non-repudiation is, non-denial, right? Non-denial, you cannot refuse. And that is why all forms or all activities of cybersecurity use what we call logging, log. They log all the events and incidents that happens in the cyberspace. It is logged somewhere. If it happens over your network, it is logged in your network space. If it happens over your phone, it is logged on your phone. If it happens with your system, it's logged on your system. So there's no activity that you carry out on your laptop that is not logged somewhere in that laptop. From the inception of that laptop up to your date, everything that you have done on your system or your phone is recorded and stored somewhere on that phone. It is a goal of cybersecurity to achieve that also, so that people will not be able to deny their actions. And that is what digital forensic investigators always leverage on, to prove to you that you cannot deny your actions. You cannot deny all the things that you have done, right? So it supports the concept of non-repudiation, deterrence, fault isolation, intrusion, detection and prevention, and after action, recovery and legal action. So it is used to support all of these things, right? You want to know who actually committed a fault in the system. Through because of these logs, you will definitely know. Even if you want to present it in the court of law, right? You can also know these things, right? It can also achieve that, right? So there is no truly 100% secure system in the practical sense of it. But technologically, they must be able to be traced to security breach to a responsible party, right? So it helps you to do tracing or attribution, to really attribute a particular crime to its owner. So system must keep records of their activities to permit later forensic analysis. Now I've talked about digital forensic investigators, right? This is what they always leverage on. So when an investigator take hold of your phone, what he's looking for are those things that you have done that you cannot deny that you have actually done them, right? So those are the things that they will be looking for, right? So we also look at the key elements of cybersecurity. So before we look at that, I don't know if there are any questions as it concerns the objectives of cybersecurity. I know after non-repudiation, we have trust. And like I have told us, cyber security comes to help build trust in the cyberspace, right? Because without those trust in the cyberspace, some of us will not want to do transactions online, right? But because we trust our bank app and all of those things with the aid of the cyberspace, that is when we can actually sit in your house, go and put your money in a bank, sit in your house, and you are comfortably seated, right? Knowing that okay, nothing will happen to that. So trust is one of the things that cybersecurity has come to build or to achieve. So I don't know if there is any question from what I have explained so far. Let's go ahead and then ask if there is any question. Dr. Mark, are you there? Dr. Timmy, are you there? Any questions so far?
Well, so far from my side, there's no question. Everything you have been, lecturing on is quite clear and straightforward. So from here,
Oh,
I don't have any questions so far. Everything is well understood by me. So I don't know if there's any other question or if there's any question from any other person over there.
okay, Mark and Timmy, is there any questions so far as it regards the
No
objectives
question
of
from my side, so sir.
cybersecurity?
At least
Oh,
what you are explaining is very very easy to understand, sir.
okay, okay. Mark, you want to say something? Okay, so let's proceed because this aspect is where we come in. A key element of cybersecurity, right? Policy mechanisms and then assurance, right? So like why I say this is where we come in is because all of us that are in peace and conflict resolution, most times some of the things that helps us the most is developing policies, is when you work with policies, right? When you work with set of rules, when you work with agreements, for people to be able to seamlessly live together and then, following a particular pattern of life, right? So that is where we come in, right? Where you specify several requirements. What it's what is it supposed to do? What are these things? What the things that you put on ground, what are they supposed to achieve? What should you put on ground? For instance, if there's a conflict in a cyberspace, let's say another country is undermining, remember we talked about nation states earlier. So another country is undermining the cyberspace of another country, and you have to come up with maybe a resolution document, right? Or you have met with both of them and they have actually, agreed, and you have to help them come up with a document. So when we look at policy, we are not just looking at policy only in the organizational level, even though policy is developed by organizations, right? So if we want to define policy, we say sets of rules and regulations set out by an organization for itself on how they do things, on how they operate in the organization. But we will generalize it as set of rules because both regulations are set of rules, both guidelines are sets of rules, both your policies are also set of rules, right? So there are quite a lot of it, a lot of things that has to do with set of rules. So even if you're bringing peace or you're bringing resolution, or you're trying to resolve a conflict, right? You still need to know, okay, what are the type of document, what are the type of things that we'll put together, right? Now that's for peace and conflict resolution. But when you look at cybersecurity, we encourage organizations to put out enough policies to prevent and deter people from carrying out attacks on them, right? So if I am allowed to come with their phones to the organization or to the office, I should be able to draw out some policies on how they must use their phone in the organization. I must not just allow them to come and connect their phone to the general network of the organization, because a criminal can go through their phone or hack through their phone in order for that criminal to penetrate the organization. So if I'm drawing out my policies, I should know all of these things. I should know that, okay, there should be something like segmentation, segmenting. It should be something like segmentation, whereby you segment, maybe you allow a segment of the network to be used for BYOD, right? Segment of the network to be used for bring your own device, for that kind of stuff, right? So policy is quite important. The next thing is mechanisms implementing security controls. As a matter of fact, almost all the things that we do in cybersecurity, as it has to do with infrastructure, is for us to implement security controls, right? And as a matter of fact, if you look at almost all the documents, even though I think with time we'll look at some of these frameworks and documents, if you look at almost all the cybersecurity frameworks that we have, whether it is NIST, whether it is COBIT, whichever it is, right? They have different types of security controls that must be implemented at what level and at what stage, right? So you must implement security control. When I say implement security control, for instance, running an antivirus on your device or installing an antivirus that works on your device is actually you implementing security control. So you mustn't go and look for something big there to say you want to implement to show that you are implementing security control, right? So you have to, start from where you can and where you have challenges from, right? And then the last one is assurance, which is the correctness of security control. So you don't just implement the security control, you have to test them, test and retest them to be assured that they are actually working and working well, right? They're actually working and they're working well, right? So those are the pillars of the element of cyber security. Remember, we have talked about some key terms and key elements about the cyberspace initially. So we are looking at the cyber security aspect of it now. So then for defensive cybersecurity, how do you keep yourself defensive, right? Because we actually have offensive and defensive forms of cybersecurity, right? Offensive in the sense that people do what we call hacking today to help organizations stay abreast with techniques in which hackers can use. People do what we call penetration testing today, right? To test your network and then help you patch them, determine the weakness in that your system, and then help you to patch them, right? So all of those things are offensive. They are offensive strategies, right? So if you look at defensive strategies, we consider things like zero trust. Keep everybody out, zero trust. So this is one modern technique that we are using to achieve cybersecurity the most, whereby you trust no one. So you do not trust anybody, with your cyber assets. Everybody must be kept out. So if I use the analogy when we talk about giving my child my car keys, and my car is, of value to me, has become my asset. So when you're looking at zero trust, you are not even giving anybody the car key. Yourself, you are the one keeping the car key, right? Nobody else have access to it. You are keeping everybody out of that system, right? So that's zero trust. You trust nobody, right? Then code signing, firewalls, content filtering. So you can install a firewall on your network or your device to, keep these people out, keep these hackers out, right? By code signing, you will say you can actually sign a document virtually, you know, so that even these hackers, when they get hold of it, hackers cannot even get hold of it, and even when they see it, they do not know the sign or the signature that you have used to sign that resources, right? Right? Then you say let him in, but keep him from doing damages. So sandboxing, right? I talked about you are allowing people to bring their device to the office or to the office to use. So what have you put in place? And I talk about segmenting a network. You can decide to segment your network so that those people bringing their devices can stay in that network without affecting the entire network. That is what um, sandboxing is like. So sandboxing is you create a virtual environment for the hacker and keep it there for the cyber criminal. Just create it and keep it there so that the cyber criminal can come and think that, oh, he has actually gained access and he will be trying all what he is trying on that particular, you know, on that thing that you have created for him, or that virtual platform that you have created for the hacker bot. He can never gain access to your main network. So, typical example, for instance, you have a fence in your house and you have the major gates. So you just imagine that you decide to build a smaller gate um, somewhere and make it to be open. But while you build that smaller gate and make it to be open, you can plant security people there or somebody to be always manning that gate. So the criminal coming to steal your compound, notice that the big gate is closed, but he now knew that, okay, there's a smaller gate. You'll be thinking that, okay, he can actually gain access through the smaller gate. And when he gains the access, he cannot really come into the main compound. You're just keeping him in one location there. So he's doing all that he's doing in that location, thinking that he actually has gained access to you. That is what we refer to as sandboxing, right? The access control is when you start granting people access based on several things, like maybe your discretion, your your discretion, their mandates. So a particular person has a mandate or has the rank to access a particular cyber asset. So you grant that person that right. So for instance, like we are talking about the car and the child thing, definitely, even if I put that rules, no matter how strong the rule may be, but my wife can always have access to that car key, whether I like it or not, right? So I can decide to say, okay, she should be having it based on her role and responsibility in the house, right? So we can say, okay, because of her role, she have this access. So we refer to that as rule-based access control. Because somebody has this type of role to play, you are granting that person access based on that role. You can also decide to say, okay, because there's a mandate, somebody has given me an order to give this person that access, right? So I can also give the person based on mandate. Then I can also grant access to people based on my discretion. I just like you, so hold my key for me. Right now, that's discretion, right? Or somebody that has been keeping the key has been faithful. I just okay. Since you have been faithful on this job, always keep my key for me, right? So that's discretional access control. So what I'm trying to say is there are different types of access control based on rules, based on discretion, based on mandates, right? So those are the type of access control we have, right? Then catch him prosecute him, right? Catch the person and prosecute the person. So whenever there's any attack, always try to see how you can, you know, catch the person and take the person to court, right? Why we are saying this is some agencies are interested in just catching people and then putting news out there, right? They don't take you to court, there's no prosecution, and the moment they have put out their news, that is all, right? So we are not doing that. We are advising that okay, when you catch a criminal, you always take the criminal to court, right? Or prosecute the criminal. So the next technique is defense in depth. Defense in depth. That is another technique used to achieve cyber security. So let me explain defense in depth contextually for us to know. Defense in depth is just like you have a building, and in the building you have rooms for your children, right? So a child is in her room, right? Her room is being safe and is being protected by the house building, which is also being protected by the fenced compound, which is now protected by your estate fence, right? So you can see it's just like you have an onion, like we have in onion, whereby the smaller aspect, the onion has something inside. Some the other one is covering it, the other one is covering it, the other one is covering it, just like we have in onion. That is all referred to as defense in depth. So the major asset is inside in the middle of those balls, and then every other thing starts covering. Right? So most times our defense in depth is portrayed by this diagram. And like we said, when we say data, data is the smallest thing, is our oil, right? So it is always what we are protecting online. So data, then from data we move to applications, right? So your applications are also protected. So what we are saying here is putting security at all layers, right? Putting security at all of these layers. Security at with of data, if it is at rest, I told us encrypt it, right? So data application security where you install things like antivirus and all whatnot. So for instance, you have encrypted a message, right? You have encrypted a message and you now decide to install an antivirus on that same system. And then you decide to put it in a network that, only a particular segment of persons can actually be in that VLAN or in that segment of network, right? Then it will now be covered by the security of your internal network, that's your router, right? Then it will now be covered by the security of your perimeter. So if I'm using an MTN SIM, MTN also have a security there that they have put in place, right? Then the physical security, which are like the guard that all these people are putting in place. Then we have the policies, procedures, and awareness, right? So these ones are something that we need to be doing always, to also put in security. So what I am saying in essence is that at the data level, you implement security, a type of security that is peculiar to the data level, right? You come up again to the application level, you implement another security. You move to the host level, you implement. So as you're moving up, so you are implementing security in all of these aspects. So if a cyber criminal comes to want to attack this data, for instance, you notice that it goes through, you know, several steps, right, before you can get in. So this is what we refer to as defense in depth. A defense that you are providing for something that is inside. It's hard to be traced. It's hard to be found. Something like that, right? So that is what we refer to as defense in depth, right? So if you read the write-up, you say defense in depth is a security strategy in which several protection layers are placed throughout a cyber infrastructure, right? You are placing security at all the levels of the cyber infrastructure. So it helps to prevent direct attacks against an information system and data because a break in, a break in, because a break in one layer only leads to the attacker attacking the other layer, right? So if you do defense in depth, let's say you have 7 defenses that you have put in place and somebody wants to attack it. You understand? The person they help prevent the direct attack. So the person might attack the first one, he succeeds. He will now start thinking of how to go about the second one, and he succeeds. Maybe after 6 months or 1 year, he now succeeds. He still goes again to look for another security, or the moment he brings that one, another challenge comes to him, right? So that is what we refer to as defense in depth. When you implement security at all levels of your cyber asset. So if my cyber asset is my car key or my car, for instance, my fiber asset is my car. I now decide to build a house that I normally lock the car inside. So I drive in, lock all my doors, lock the car, I now lock the building. And let's say the building is in the entire building, you still lock it. So as you keep locking it and you still keep going on, keep going on, keep going on, you're actually forming what we call defense in depth, right? So that is a security technique again that we use. So this also we throw a little light on it the other day. I think this will be our last slide for today. Cybersecurity landscape, right? So these are the several areas in which cybersecurity can, as a cybersecurity person, you can actually fall into. You can decide to work as a network security person, a mobile security person, end user security. So I believe we all know what end users are. So end users are the people that have direct connection with your device, or the device that have direct connections with you, right? So your phones are end device, right? My laptop is an end device. So me that is using that end device, I am actually an end user, right? So you that is there, you are an end user to all of your gadgets that you're using, right? So somebody can decide to study end user security, right? We have business continuity plan, we have database security, we have application security, we have digital identity management, we have data data security, and then cloud security, and then infrastructure security. So these are some of the major aspects of security that we have, that as cybersecurity experts, having the knowledge of cybersecurity, you can comfortably fit into any of these landscape, into any of these cybersecurity um, landscape or field of study, right? So we want to draw the curtain for today here, so that we see if there are questions, we take them. If there are no questions, then we postpone our class to the next class, where we'll be looking at several other things like weaknesses in systems and how we can identify them and know them, right? So that is what we'll be looking at. That's vulnerabilities in systems, right? So we want to take 1 or 2 questions or comments before we draw the curtain for today. Any question or comment, please?
Yeah, well done, Dr. Ode. This is a very good one. I think the presentation is, fantastic. I for one, I think I have learned a lot. And looking at this cyber security landscape, it's quite wide. But I think there was one area. I think there's one area that I was looking at in respect of this cyber security landscape that I feel was not mentioned, or maybe it's not even supposed to be part of the landscape, and that is the IoT security. I see network security, application security, digital identity, data security, cloud security, infrastructure, but I'm not seeing IoT security, or is it not part of the?
Okay, it's actually part of it. Actually, if you want to even start looking at
Security
all of
landscape, or
it,
I mean, can you just share?
yeah, it's actually part of it. The thing is, it is not actually all the landscapes that are here, because if you want to start listing them, there are technology that emanates on daily basis, that emerges on daily basis, and all of these technologies have their security aspect of it. And like I told us from the first class, that we are looking at the cyberspace as a holistic domain of its own. So any technology that emerges in that space has its security aspects. So when I say cyber security, all of those forms of security starts from you understanding what threats are, what are the assets, what are these ones, what are the vulnerabilities, before you now talk about it. So IoT security is there, robotic security is there, AI security is there, because AI security is also upcoming, right? And because they have not finished developing AI, our generative AI today is actually, coming up. And for the fact that research has actually adopted, I think, 4 characteristics of human intelligence to build AI, they are moving towards another characteristic, which is the emotional characteristics. So the moment that comes in, you see that AI security will come into full form, right? And all forms of research will also consider it. But just like you have said, IoT security is there. Even smart city today is also coming up. So we have smart city security. So these are not just all the, other aspects of all the security that we have as it concerns, the cyber space. But these are just the ones that are listed here. So there are actually others, like you have mentioned, IoT security, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. I think it's quite clear now,
Yeah.
and I'm very okay with what we have done so far today.
Okay. Dr. Timmy, you want to say something before we draw the curtain? Okay, so since Dr. Timmy is not saying anything, I think we can draw the curtain here for today. So let's have a wonderful night rest and then see us in our next class. Have a wonderful night and bye.